weak knees. We do what we can to lift other people up. This is the mission God has put us on as Christians. You see, when we lift them up, it's just not physically. You can give anybody a place to live. You can give anybody food to eat. You can give anybody clothes to wear. But if you don't go beyond that, and you don't try to lift their soul, you've not done anything for them except made them comfortable until they die. And then when they die, they're going to go to that place called hell that many of you don't even believe in. Because if we believed in it the way we say we did, we wouldn't be living the way we ought to, or that we do. We also know that it does matter if men abuse women and children. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 7. Husbands, in the same way, live with your wives with an understanding of their weaker nature. I know, I'm going to stop right there. Some of you have wives who don't demonstrate a weaker nature. Their frying pan has proved that. A lot of you, whenever you say, you want to go fishing, wait a minute, let me ask my wife. You want to do this? Wait a minute, let me check on with my wife. But when it comes down to it, as a rule, women have the weaker nature. And most of the time it's because we have pushed it on them and we have kept them down. A lot of people are afraid of a woman who's able to speak, who's able to think. They're intimidated, especially in the ministry. But he says, with your wives, the weaker nature, showing them honor as co-heirs of the grace of life, so that your prayers will not be hindered. Do you understand? If men abuse their families, they're wasting your time praying. What does the Bible say right here? If you don't recognize them and help them, showing them honor as co-heirs of grace, they're just as important as you. Did you know that in the world of Christian faith, it's the only major world religion that is predominantly practiced by women? Did you know that? Islam and Judaism, the other two major world religions, are mostly male-oriented. And it's mostly males who do the worship. But when it comes to Christianity, we've been given a whole different thing. It does matter. And we also know that it does matter who sits on the back of the bus. Folks, you need to understand that. Galatians chapter 3, verse 28, there is no Jew or Greek, slave or free, male or female. You know what he is saying here? In another place, he says barbarian or Scythian. But here he says there's no such thing as far as God is concerned as a Jew or Gentile or Greek, slave or free, male or female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. When God looks down here at us, yes, he knows that Danny is male and that Dee is female. He knows that because he created them. But he doesn't look at them just as that. Through the eyes of the cross, when he looks at us through that, he sees us as sinners. And he sees us all the same, either forgiven or still outside, waiting to be forgiven. It does matter. We do not have the right to practice the racism that is practiced in the United States, and we certainly don't have the right to practice it in the church. And did you know there's a lot of churches that are offended when that is said? Because we got this idea that we're better than them. And let me clue you in.
You're not.
There are churches who have pictures of Rosa Parks in the hallway. I've been to them. And they think the same thing about us. I've been in Hispanic churches in the South Florida when I was down there, and I picked up the word gringo.
Gringo.
I knew what they were talking about. I went into a store one day. I don't speak Spanish. And there was nobody in there that was English except me. And they were just rattling off. And they were looking at me and kind of snickering. And when I stood up there and paid for my stuff, I never said a word. I said, gracias. They thought I understood what they said. They were talking about, I didn't have a clue what they were talking about. I knew they were talking about me, but I don't know what they were saying. said that to say that prejudice is a sword that cuts both ways. And we need to understand that it does matter. And also we know that God has told us to love one another. 1 John chapter 3, verse 11. For this is the message you have heard from me. From the beginning, we should love one another. You see, God is telling us that it does matter. Because of the empty tomb, there are some things that we need to do. And we need to know. And I want to share with you why any of this matters is that God, through the cross, was redeeming to himself, man to himself, by what he did on that cross. This was not a religious thing. It was a relationship thing. The implements they used to get him there were just tools of the trade in that day and time. Folks, today we wouldn't use those things. Today the cop would use nightsticks. They would use pepper spray. They might even use a taser. But the thing they used that day, that was just tools of the trade. And he did that because he was redeeming himself to us. But it was sealed at his promise to mankind by the resurrection. What he did here was his promise, but the empty tomb with the seal on it. This was the evidence that he would do exactly what he said he was going to do. Folks, you need to understand, God said that he was going to reconcile the world to himself through Jesus Christ. And that's the only way people can get to him, through the Lord Jesus Christ. Now, just as the rainbow was given as a sign that he would never again flood the entire world, the empty tomb is his proof that death will not be the end of all things for mankind. Some of you have no hope today, and if you were to die, or someone you loved were to die, you say, well, I just don't know what I'm going to do. But the empty tomb was the promise that death is not the end of all things for us. There is more. Now, museums today are filled with the bones of people who are found in many places in the world. And they're just curiosities for people to see. Have any of you museums saw the bones of people? You used to could go to St. Augustine and see the excavation where they dug up and they had it open. But then the Aboriginal Americans said, no, you can't leave our people like that. And now they have pictures of it, but they have closed the graves back up again. But we can go to museums and see these things, and they're just bones. But folks, I want to ask this question. Why do we do everything we can to get our POWs and MIAs back if they're just bones? Why do people say no one left behind? Why will we sacrifice our lives to get the dead bodies of people who served with us back here on American soil, or to at least be accounted for? Why? Because they were more than just people. They were our family. They were people who were important to us. And here's the reason why. Because God has put in man the ability to care. When you walk by those museums and you see those people whose very civilizations have long since been dead, don't you need to understand something? They were somebody, and God put it inside of us to live together. He put it inside us, and it does matter. There is something to be worried and concerned about. Without the resurrected Christ, there is no reason to care, because there are just so many more bones to be added to the collection. You know that. Now, you know you can leave your body to science. You don't want it buried, you don't want it burned. You can leave it to science, and they'll take it apart in all different pieces. They'll put somebody on this planet and use it all kinds of ways. And some people are really grossed out about that. But the truth of the matter is, a lot of people who care less about this, because we care, who cares?